It could be you. Not him, not him. Could be the rest of you. Right, before and after. Thank you very much.
Hi guys, my name is Sonny Koh. I'm a front-end developer. I work for Bed Bath & Beyond. I've been coming here since like the beginning, but I've never presented. I always wanted to contribute. I had some ideas to contribute for like the lightning rounds because they were like really short, and I really enjoy the lightning rounds because I get the most out of them because they're like really small bits of information that you can grasp and just kind of apply right away. And it's something that's like a full framework. It's really hard to wrap your head around in a couple hours. But I had some ideas before. I was thinking about doing a presentation about different techniques for lazy loading, but that kind of blew up. There's a lot of different things going on right now, and I just came back from a conference. Chrome is actually the next iteration is gonna have lazy loading built in. It's just gonna be lazy tag. You're good to go. But anyway, I wanted to do this presentation, but it's more of a CSS thing, but it's really easy to wrap your head around. It's really simple, and maybe some of this information is new, and you might be able to use it. So just by show of hands, tell me like how many of you guys actually use like before and after in your CSS markup? Like half of you? Okay, that's kind of what I thought. So if you inspect anything on before and after, you're gonna see like 2 colons, even if you set it at 1 colon. If you look at Microsoft's definition, 1 colon is a pseudo class that was introduced with CSS2, and then two colons represents a pseudo element. What's that mean? Doesn't mean anything. After IE8, there's no distinction between pseudo classes and pseudo elements. If you put 1 colon, it will just show on your inspector as 2 colons.
I almost fixed your title because it had 2 colons, and I was like, he doesn't know what he's doing. Sonny, can you speak up just a little bit? I'm actually afraid the camera won't pick you up.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
Yeah. So how many of you guys use Bootstrap or Foundation, or have used Bootstrap or Foundation? So I figure like pretty much everyone here. If you guys used the earlier versions of Bootstrap or Foundation, that's not flex based. Every time you created a row and you inspected the row, you would see that it would inject this thing into your page, which display this table, which kind of like makes sure that that row clears everything on your screen. And if you guys been around for like IE6, and before the polyfills came around, there was like IE hacks, and this was based on the ClearFix hacks, which was real popular in the IE6 days, where they just figured out if you inject this table into your page and make it a table, it will just clear everything, including IE6. The other thing that Bootstrap and Foundation does is anything on your page is normalized to box sizing, border box. If you don't know what that does, it's part of normalization. I don't think you guys even think about it, but if you took it out, you look at your forms, your form elements would just kind of blow up. So when you add a before and after tag, it has to have a content description, and that content can take on just empty quotes, which is empty. You could take on a path to an image. It could take a string. It could take a hexadecimal value. It could take a counter, and it could take a data attribute source. I'll get to that later. So I'm assuming most of you guys are using like less or SAS to write out your CSS. If you are and you want to add before and after, you just do the ampersand colon right inside the div, the parent div, and it'll write it out for you. So this is what kind of like sent me down this rabbit hole, finding out what else I can do with these before and after things. I'm sure you guys all had to deal with something like this where it's just a div, rounded corners, you got a little pointer sticking out somewhere from either the top or the bottom. Bring that up. So that little pointer, maybe like 15 years ago, you make a div and you have to attach a little GIF at the bottom to make that little triangle. And then, been around, huh? And then maybe like 10 years ago, someone figured out you can make a triangle out of a div by making two sides transparent. And then like 5 years ago, I was working with just another development team out of Miami, and he showed me like, instead of actually putting a span or a div, you could use this before thing and make the before into this little pointer thing. And I was like, wow, you don't have to kind of mesh up your content with this pointer that's kind of messes up, makes your HTML messy. And so I wanted to explore what else can you do with this kind of stuff. So the first thing I want to know is, a lot of times I don't want just the triangle. I want just like an outline with triangle. So I was thinking, I have a before and I have an after. How about if I just place them on top? Because that's what I would normally do, is just have two divs, one with the background color, one with the color of the line I want, and just position them a little bit off to make that little div. And it works. So you get this kind of thing, which is, it's just a UL with an LI and a span. And then the UL itself has a class. That class draws a line at the bottom, and then I have a before and after to make that little triangle at the bottom. So the next thing I want to know is, can you manipulate the before and after with JavaScript? Well, you can. So before, I mentioned that these before and after things injects content into your page. And I specifically use the word page and not DOM, because anything you use for before and after never becomes part of the DOM. So when you use JavaScript, if it's not in the DOM, JavaScript won't recognize it. You won't have access to it. So how do you manipulate the before and after? Anything you want to manipulate with the before and after, you set it to this syntax, which is a bar. You have to have a dash dash. You can name it whatever you want. And then the optional second parameter is the initial value. And that kind of like sits on the parent element. I know you guys are all into like components and React and stuff like that. It's the same kind of thing where you're throwing up the state from the element itself, and the view displays according to the state. So just to demonstrate, like, my display here, like I said, was just a UL, an LI, and a span.
Do you have the code?
Sorry.
Can we see if you have the code?
Yeah. Wait 1 second.
Yeah.
So like I said, it's just a,
Can you blow it up a little?
how do I blow it up?
Control Shift plus.
Command plus.
Command plus.
Mac.
Okay, sorry. So just to demonstrate what this does, I'm gonna change the class on the UL, which is the only class on the page, and it becomes this. So this guy, if you're using like if you're doing like a e-commerce thing and you need like a checkout process thing, like create this for just throw an idea for like doing a process checkout process for the user. I'm using Flex, so it's reflexive, and the little before and after things are gonna stick to the LI points. It's a more cleanup. This is kind of like a dirty version, but we did a click. Sorry.
I've never seen this before.
Me either.
I'm completely. What was the thing you did there? The var? Like you did that on the element, like the element itself in a style tag. How did that relate to the before and after?
How did it comes down to the before and after?
What's the
section.
relationship between the two? Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Sorry.
No, I'm surprised. You had questions actually.
Has anyone ever seen this?
No.
We're pretty knowledgeable people here, Sonny.
So I'm feeling a little better about myself.
That's very
All
cool.
just learn some shit. Unless you're doing it all wrong.
That's very cool.
Sure that video is Yes, because it said you don't know something, and it's recorded.
This is going to be.
So erasing the last 5 minutes.
I knew that already.
So this would be like the before and after, the parent values, and whatever the before and after, you would get it from the var. And this gets pulled from whatever the parent is.
So
And
it's
you don't
gonna-
need this, the second value. The second value is optional. That's the default value.
So in this example, just so I'm following, it's going to set that to whatever 30, whatever was in the parent element, the left.
Yeah, I'm using JavaScript
So it's a
to
variable, and then you're using JavaScript to manipulate the variable.
on
And
the
the before
parent.
and after elements are listening. They're taking in that variable. That's actually very clever.
But in this case, so like the left before 30 picks, if you could you scroll back down
Yeah.
to the child, and that's going into, oh, there's left after and left before. Okay, gotcha.
And you can name those whatever you want.
Okay.
It just has to have a dash dash.
So I will say, now that I understand it, it's not that I didn't know this. I've never seen it put together this way.
No, it's cool.
It's very cool.
Because Megan was talking about CSS variables.
Yeah, I've seen the variables. I was talking about them with the post CSS stuff last month, but
That's cool.
using the variables inside of something you can't normally get to from JavaScript is that's pretty fucking cool.
So can we see your JavaScript? That we have to see the whole picture. Now let's see the whole picture.
Whatever you were going to talk about, just stop it. And just we'll tell you what to show us.
I'm sorry, this is really cool.
He said
the
half an
JavaScript's
hour.
really sloppy. I just kind of
No,
threw it together,
that's-
but
there's no spell. We don't care.
so how many? The syntax is style dot set property, and then what's that?
Can you zoom that
It's
in?
just
Whee!
it's the element, the style, and then set property, and then whatever name you name your before and after value, and the value you want to pass it to. So once again, I'm gonna show like on that UL, just gonna change the class again. This is
Wizard.
I have a just a pet peeve of mine is I hate radio buttons. I think they're just designed really badly. Okay. In terms of UX, I don't know if there's any people that study UX and usability, but just the hit area is so tiny that you speed up the mouse and you have to slow down enough to land on that small radio button. So I love the toggle, this kind of toggle thing. And I'm using the before and after just to animate the little ball across. And it's the same JavaScript I'm using from the previous ones. It's just, all I'm doing is setting an active on one of the LIs, and the rest of them I'm taking out whatever, if there was an active class on there. So the next one, once again, this is just a UL, an LI, and a span. And the reason why I wanted to show that is so I stole this from CSS Tricks because I thought it was so cool. Once again, it's the same UL, it's a UL, LI, a span. And if you wanted to do a rating, the LI with the before and after makes a star, and the span does the same thing, making a gray star underneath it. And I can select to give it a star rating, just to show like how these stars are created. It was really clever, actually. Kind of see how the stars are kind of created. It's just these triangles that are kind of rotated around, and they make these stars come together. So if you wanted to do like a star rating without using images, this would work, but the problem with this is that it doesn't allow you to do half stars, which is really popular.
Oh, jeez, really?
So, I've seen this solution solved by making the stars into fonts and using the before to like just push the star halfway back of the overflow. If you want to take a look at, Groupon does a great job doing that. I have a solution that requires one image.
Could you use like HTML entities for that? Like there's got to be a filled and unfilled star.
There is, but you can't do like a half thing like that.
Well, then you have to do your cheat like inside a container, move it to the left or something. Right?
Something like I tried all kinds like that.
I don't even know. Yeah.
Okay, so this is my solution for half stars. And the way this is working is, so maybe like 15 years ago, you had to have like 11 different stars to put into your page to represent the different star markups. And then maybe like 10 years ago, someone figured out you could just put a nice little sprite and just move the sprite up and down with the JavaScript, and that worked out. So just my solution, which is I have one image of 5 stars, and people don't use this because there's not a real good use case for it, but PNG files actually have built-in filters that you can control with CSS that no one uses because they're not really that useful. But
So what you're saying is you're telling us useless stuff.
yeah.
No, we can solve this.
The one thing I do use is that you can take any PNG file image, and with CSS you can make it a gray image using, you can pull out all the color out of it. So this is what I did was this is just one div. there's nothing inside the div. It's just a background image, and the before has the same image as a before element.
Oh, shifted.
And it's shifting. So
That's really smart.
and this guy is all it's doing is just moving that thing back and forth and hitting it with the overflow. So every little bit of memory counts if you're trying to conserve space as much as possible.
That's pretty cool.
So once again, this is just one div, and I put this controller just to kind of mimic like an Ajax refresh the loading thing. So this is one div. I have an input for the marker that goes across, and I have an after that displays this percentage that's kind of tied to this scroller thing. The one thing about this is that anything in the content descriptor that I showed you before, it can't use the var. It has to use a data value from the parent element. Right here, I have that data thing. So this is a real common pattern. If you guys work in responsive or mobile, you get a little hamburger at the top. Click on the hamburger, get a little slide window with a blocker box shadow, and the box shadow prevents you from clicking on anything behind there. You do some work in your slide window, click off the X, and the slider goes away. Well, I want to know if this box shadow, if you can attach this as an after to the slider itself. Turns out you can. There's some quirks I need to go through. So this shadow in the back that's attached to this guy, if you're gonna do this technique, you have to use transform and translate Z, and it has to have a value of -1. You can't put like 0 and make the parent 1, or make the shadow 1 and make the parent 2. It always has to be -1. The parent could be whatever you want. You could be 2, 3, and it'll still preserve whatever stack you have. You have to have this transform style preserve 3D. It'll break without it. It'll break without it. And I don't know if this is a bug in the browser or if they intend to do this, but both the parent and the shadow are position fixed. So when you position elements fixed, it becomes fixed relative to the viewport body. For some reason, pseudo elements like before and after, if you position fixed, they become positioned relative to the parent element, the true DOM element. So what's that mean? That means the slider, I have it fixed and I have it positioned top 50, and the shadow, if I want to go to the very top, I have to have it positioned top -50 to make up the difference. Oh, and by the way, I made this hamburger out of just one A tag with a before and after to make the 2 bars. and you can animate the little before and afters. Anything you can do with a div, you can do with before and after. The only thing you can't do is it won't take HTML markup. I didn't have this ready for this presentation, but I went through anyway. The same thing with the modal. You do 100 different ways of doing a modal. I attached the background shadow to this modal guy. Just becomes one div. I mean, if you guys building components with React, you can just throw in that div, and you don't have to worry about omitting whatever to get this shadow to work. And I created this little close button with the same thing with a tag and a before and after to make the cross areas. So here's the bad news. that doesn't work on IE11. So
man.
yeah.
That's my bread and butter.
Shut up.
So it'll work. I have to support IE11 on this wall, so I can use it.
There's a picture.
Sorry.
A11 isn't done.
So this is the one I'm proud of, because I haven't seen anyone else come up with this solution. I don't know if you guys ever had to work with an input file to upload documents, or we do a lot of uploading photos for personalization stuff. For some reason, HTML5 they didn't allow input file types to be stylized with CSS. So if you Google stylized input file types, you can get two paths of solutions. One solution is you create a div, you put a background image on that div that looks like your whatever you want that input to look like, and then you put the actual input file on top of that div as opacity 0. So when the user sees it, he thinks he's clicking on the thing, but he's actually clicking on the background image. So that's one solution. There's a problem with that, is that it's a background image. You need someone with Photoshop to keep updating. The other thing is that the input file thing in its natural state, when you click on it, it displays the name of the file that you clicked on itself. Something like that wouldn't work. The second path I've seen on Google of people coming up with this solution is, so it is a form element. And with a form element, you can connect it with a label, and you just say for whatever name you give to the input field. So you can make that the true input display none, and stylize the label itself as the input field. So when you click on the label, it's bringing up your input, your upload UI. The problem with that is that if accessibility is an issue and you display the input as none, it's not going to recognize on a tab index. And the second is the same thing. You can't. It won't display the input file name as the natural state of the true input file. So my solution was to do the same thing using the before and after again. The choose file. This is what the input will look like on your screen if you, out of the box, no styling. You click on it, you get it brings up your thing, and then when you click, it will display the name of the file that you selected. So what I did was, this left area is displaying the button area, I select the same image again, no display. And this, actually, you have to have a little bit of JavaScript. It's not in its pure state. This is JavaScript. It's just taking that the input itself and set the attribute of whatever the data is, and you, the file name, you'll take that string and just display it in that area. You don't need this, but if you want like the true interaction of HTML input type file, this is where you would do it. And if accessibility is an issue, it'll still recognize it as a regular input. So my last guy is so there's like there's 100 different ways to do parallax scroll. This is my demonstration just of parallax scroll using just one div. So this one div, and I'm using a before and after, and just to show that you can animate anything in the before and after, right?
Are you leaving
Have this
Chicago?
Sorry?
Are you leaving Chicago?
No.
This is gonna be a nice
A picture of Schoenberg's pretty crappy.
The one, I mean, these are just things that you guys can do. I'm not saying this is the right way. I thought maybe like things you could add to your toolbox. I was talking with this one guy about accessibility. Like, if you're doing like stuff like this and you're adding a lot of images for like in the before and after, they're not accessible. They're not going to be read with screen readers. A lot of the before and after, they have problems being read with screen readers. So if you're working for like a public company or a university or something like that, you are breaking the law. You have to be accessible nowadays. That's it. If there's any slide anyone wants me to go back to, if we have time.